Good morning. I'll call the Wright County Board meeting of December 22nd, 2015 to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And good morning, Commissioner Dryden is off on his Christmas merriment already. It'll just be the four of us. Minutes of December 15th. Any comments, corrections?
Mr. Chair, I will move the minutes from last week.
Second. Motion has been made by Commissioner Hewson, second by Commissioner Burrell to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Review and approval of agenda. Is there anything anybody wishes to add to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
I will second that.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Burrell, second by Commissioner Hewson to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody wishes to remove for further consideration or discussion?
Chair, I will move the consent agenda.
Okay. Motion has been made by Commissioner Hewson to approve the consent agenda. Is our second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Burrell. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. It's fairly painless. And there are no time items today. Committee minute, personnel, Commissioner Swatsky, if you would please.
Mr. Chair, the Personnel Committee met on December 16, 2015. Members present, Sawatsky, Hewson, and Kelly. Others present, Backus, Byrle, Dahl, Gilman, Hesse, Hivela, Klein, Matthias, Odell, Schwartz, and Virgin. First item for discussion was reclassification of accounting clerk to accounting tech. That is a human services item and will be handled at that board. Second item, request for extended personal leave. Hesed, an employee, returned to work on the 15th of December at a reduced schedule and is now doing project work. The employee's present leave expires on 12/26. There was a request to extend this because the person is kind of back on a part-time basis. So there is still some component of leave that exists. So the request is to extend this leave to April 1st, 2016. Item 3, revisions to performance evaluation process and forms for department heads. I think as each of you know, there's kind of been a little bit of discussion lately relative to the performance evaluations and what would be appropriate for board members to have on performance evaluations. And with that in mind, HR Director Hesse presented Chris and I with a new format. And I think after reviewing it, we thought it looked pretty good. And we're going to recommend that we give that a shot. Also, if you recall, there was discussion from the board about, for the calendar year 2016, doing a 360 component to the department heads' evaluations, whereby other folks will evaluate them, and that will come to the board to use in our evaluation of them. So
It's anonymous.
it's anonymous. But again, those evaluations by folks besides the county commissioners will not count as part of their review, but the board will be able to use those in their process of reviewing the department head. So they can kind of, filter out things if they feel like, maybe there's some reason why someone, for example, below says, well, this person's a little tough with the rules. Well, maybe we think that's okay. Or we can, balance that on our own thought process, so.
It'll be a helpful tool. I like that.
But again, we had talked about that before, but the revisions to the policy are in here, or excuse me, not to the policy, the revisions to the process as far as the forms that the board is going to do are in here. If anybody has any questions on those, Sunny's here, obviously.
I applaud the changing to help it be more beneficial for us. Instead of the old form was like, how do I deal with this? I don't deal with them on a day-to-day basis, so how am I supposed to fill this out? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we complimented her work on this to make it a much more efficient process for us.
And then the final discussion was administrative department reorganization. That probably had the greatest amount of discussion in the meeting. We does everybody have the new one here? Yes, everybody's got the new one here. This is what the committee came out with. The only change that I would say on this here that I maybe in retrospect think should be a little bit different, where it says Facility Services Director, it says Future, and that's something that we would actually do pretty much immediately, right, Lee?
Correct. I would like to begin the recruitment process as soon as possible.
So on that, really, the word future should be gone, and that would just, because that's going to happen right now, whereas the other position on here that's future literally means, a few years out into the future, as opposed to, immediately. So the one thing you'll notice absent from there is the Public Information Officer, and we did have quite a bit of discussion on the Facility Services Director relative to what their duties were. Should that be a position above the current Facilities Manager, or should it be below? And one thing we had now that we did not have the last time we discussed this at the retreat is we did have job descriptions for all the positions to get a better idea of what Coordinator Kelly had hoped for these changed positions to do and that sort of thing. And Mr. Chair, with that being said, we do have this new color one here as the recommendation to present to the board here today. So,
Commissioner Swatsky, I had pulled out that from before the discussions, and I reviewed it, and I looked at it, I sent it down to Commissioner Burrell so he can just see the changes, differences,
Did you
which
wanna
is
look at it?
minor.
yeah.
But you were there in the first part of you and I weren't there, so it's kind of a little bit refreshing the background of this.
Like I say, so probably the greatest, there was a little bit of discussion on PIO. Probably a lot on the future Facility Services Director, or what is actually going to be kind of the immediate one, really, if we go forward with this. And then there was some discussion on the clerk to the county board, the administrative specialist, and that relative to those job duties now and that sort of thing. So, but again, this is the recommendation we do have here for folks today. So, I don't know, Chris, do you have anything to add?
No, I thought we had a great discussion, actually, and kind of vetted out what we could, and
It's quite detailed how you obviously had a very long discussion.
The clerk to the county board position has basically either exactly the same or approximately the same number of points as the office manager 2 position had before, so the incumbent position there will not have any change in their pay status, or, it won't impact future raises or anything like that, or being frozen or nothing. I don't know if Lee or Sonny, was there anything that I should have mentioned that I didn't mention that's an obvious oversight?
I think you had a pretty good overview there, and I would agree. And my thoughts on the meeting were that we did have quite a bit of discussion. Most of it, as with the retreat, was regarding that future Facilities Services Director, which would be not an increase in FTE. This would be a replacement of what we had as the purchasing agent, so would encompass those duties, but also take on quite a few building and project management duties within the department. So I guess today I was kind of here to answer any questions that anybody may have relative to the recommendation. So.
And now I don't know why I didn't see it. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Burrell.
Mr. Chair, and maybe I'll just direct this to Commissioner Swatsky or Commissioner Houston, but it just seems like no matter, every time we change our structure around, we have to have more management up on top. And that, I'm just looking at the future Facilities Services Director, and that person is going to be, it's a new position, but then he'll take in the purchasing. Well, couldn't we just have the facilities manager already and then put a purchasing person down below with some other duties. It just seems like we get, because how long would it be before that facility services director, oh, I can't do this purchasing at the same time. I've got all this management to do. That's what we end up doing. And so why don't we just hire a purchasing person down below? And
Well, Commissioner Burrell, what's happened as, the organization has grown, the needs have changed. The purchasing director that we had in place was, the right title, the right job description, duties for that position for many, many years. But as our county is growing and, now with 700 employees and all these different departments, they have different purchasing needs, and it just Coordinator Kelly can speak to this far better than I can, but it's just the way that positions evolve. And when our purchasing agent retired, that was the time to look at what really are the current needs, excuse me, and the purchasing agent's position or duties are being absorbed more into the other heads. But Coordinator Kelly, you've got the experience with this. You can address this better than I can.
Well, and relative to the purchasing, that's an area that has evolved over time. There's been a couple big things over the last, even 5 years. We've gone more electronic with that. And also the way we've done it process-wise has evolved. And additionally, the big thing on the horizon now is the procurement cards. So yes, we will always have a centralized purchasing function. I just think the way that it's going to be carried out is going to change a little bit and be a little more streamlined. And I guess I should point out that the purpose of this reorg, anytime we have a new position, we've looked at it. We've looked at what's the need now, but more importantly, what's the need 5 to 10 years out. And really that's what drove this reorganization, was trying to look to the future and what our needs are going to be. What's the needs for the county and the employees as well as the board. And a lot of it is to try and do a better job of the things we're doing now, and allow me to focus more on some of the bigger picture things too, and help the board more with some of the things we talked about at the retreat, the goals, the vision, the mission that we want to carry out. And that starts from the board and comes down. And I think I have to play a critical role in that, and our department does. And so I'm trying to set ourselves up for that and moving forward into the future.
Yeah, and Commissioner Burrell, one other item on this is that this service director, also, we've had warranty issues on some buildings, and we're building a brand-new building as we speak. We need somebody that can follow up on construction, can follow up on the warranties, can follow up on some of these repairs and future things going on, and it kind of was caught.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing against the purchasing agent position, but I'm saying we put a director in now. A facilities manager wasn't good enough. Now we have to have a facility services director, and he's going to be doing the purchasing stuff. And I said, I don't think it will be 2 years before, we have to have a regular full-time purchasing person. Why don't we just put a purchasing person under the facilities manager? I don't think we need the director. That's, I guess, the part I'm arguing. I'm not arguing against the purchasing person. I'd rather have more worker bees than managers.
Oh, Charlie, I think that's a reasonable philosophy. This position, what component of this position is actually purchasing, particularly as it pertains to purchasing for department? Because I think to a great extent, whereas there was once a time here a number of decades ago that pens and pencils and just about everything that got purchased went through the administration office, I think that very, very, very small percentage of that occurs now. Is that a correct statement, Lee? And to what extent does this person, what percent of their job would be dealing with purchasing beyond those issues that are a part of the facility? I'm not talking about purchasing a door that needs to be fixed, or carpeting, or services to maintain the facility, pens, pencils, those sorts of things that are operational supplies.
Sure.
How does this work now relative to before?
Well, I guess overall, rather than being more of a purchasing focus, it will be more of the facilities focus. So I guess I would, in my mind, envision the purchasing being maybe 15% of the time, of that being the, I'll call it the day-to-day, the pencils, the papers. A lot of those things have now been handled by the department. A lot of the things that we do handle are issuing purchase orders. What I envision a lot of this person will be working on as we're moving forward, and we're going to have a lot more remodel building projects, working with a risk manager also on some of the OSHA and safety stuff as well. I think there's going to be more of a need going that way into the future than it would be to have a position that's purchasing 100% of the time.
And Commissioner.
That answered your question, or?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burrell, when you look at the former org chart and the current org chart, there's actually, there's only 3 people now at that second tier, whereas before there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people at that second tier. So it streamlines things a bit that way.
Yeah. No, I said I'm okay with that. I know we talked about this at the retreat too, but I have no problem, utilizing the assistant coordinator for some management things. I think that's a good thing, and we could put more things under, her as far as I could see, but I don't know. It's just.
So I'll just reiterate one of Commissioner Glyden's concerns with this particular position. Because of warranty issues at the LEC that we didn't catch in time, and it was kind of a, who's in charge of this? We need somebody that, now we're building a new facility that will have certain warranty. We need somebody that actually, this is part of their focus, is you are in charge of making sure these things are taken care of, looked at, things like that. And that was a big concern with Commissioner Glyden, that we had nobody that was really in charge of that. And kind of purchasing agent was the coordinator. Was it the highway guy? Was it maintenance position? What was it that's looking at this?
I would echo that.
Yeah.
But you don't think one person could do that and manage the people below? So when you look at the facilities director and the facilities manager, I would make them one position in my thing, I guess. I don't think we have to have 2. Now, if our current, facilities manager doesn't have the skill set, well then, I don't know. I mean, that might be, maybe doesn't want to take on that responsibility. I don't know why we have to have somebody come in and.
I would challenge you, Commissioner Burrell, to
Well, no,
follow
I'm
Brad
not.
Hatfield around one day and see exactly what he
No,
does.
that's
He's a very busy
Mike,
person.
don't get me wrong. I'm
Very good. Very
I'm
busy.
saying I don't believe that to be true. So
Well, I don't, my interpretation of, unless you go for the equivalency, and I'm not sure, how you match that up, but our current facility manager does not meet the minimum qualifications for the future facilities, or for the facilities director position.
And what would that?
That would be a bachelor's degree in construction management or related field,
Yeah.
and 2 years of project management experience. But,
And I would say, this is where I would argue for our current facilities manager, that just because he lacks the degree does not mean he lacks the skill set to do that job. That's my.
well, there is an equivalency component there, or an equivalent combination of education and experience, and I'm not sure how, I guess I'd have to read more about and I don't know Brad's background entirely. Obviously Brad has been an outstanding, at what he's done here, but I don't know that he has the equivalency of construction management degree.
Well,
I don't know that he does or don't, but.
I guess my thing where in government and whatever, and in the corporate world too, it's like more management, more top heavy, and that's what we just tend to gravitate. And I think if somebody doesn't fight it, it's going to keep going that way.
I know they've vetted this pretty well. They've had quite a few meetings on this.
Looking
And
at the old one that you were
and
referencing,
the old
is that right
purchasing position is morphed into something, as the county's growing, we're getting more facilities.
Well, I
more
mean,
things we.
I said then maybe we could just do without that, or have that, somebody take that on as a collateral duty or something, but.
Mr. Chair, a couple comments if I could. One, again, it's all about that equivalency, the existing incumbent. Depending on looking at that, he probably would qualify and kind of discussions that expressed that it was something he may not be interested in. However, I think there's an important point that hasn't been mentioned yet. Keep in mind, back in 2014, at one point, we basically had 2 facilities managers, and we went down to 1 and consolidated there, and kind of took away that management position, and that has definitely reaped some benefits. But I would also argue that it's created some challenges. I think it's put a lot on the facilities manager's plate right now, and he's done an excellent job trying to keep up as best as he can, but it's created some challenges in areas where we haven't had challenges before, and those are a lot of the things that I feel would be helped by this facility services director. So it's really getting the people at the right levels of the organization, I feel, to get to address the needs that we have in front of us.
And Charlie, if you go back and look at it, and now you can kind of comparing it to right now, of just today of replacing the purchasing agent with this facilities director, and in a way you're kind of taking somebody that, I guess they weren't necessarily a manager, but they didn't, but they were, certainly, I don't know what the best, but this position is higher than the former one
Yes,
on the
that's
grade, I
correct.
presume. But if you go back and you look at where we were just a couple of years ago before Alabuski retired, and you look at that time, then we had the purchasing agent, then we had 2 facilities managers, as Lee mentioned, and then 2 below. So we kind of had 5 people in those capacities. In this scenario now, there's only 4 people in those capacities. So we've really reduced one from where we were a couple of years ago. Now, if you're just looking at it from where it was a couple months ago to now, you can kind of make those arguments, but if you look back a little bit further, it's actually a reduction in management, mid-level management positions than it was a couple of years ago. And then that 5th person, that new person, is technically then available to be a true frontline person, a custodian if needed. And I don't think that spot has actually been filled yet.
So are we,
Or has it, that one that kind of got opened up in that process?
I didn't follow which level.
Well, I was just mentioning how we had actually 5 people there before. We had the 2 below Al and Brad.
Correct.
We had Al and Brad, and we had Craig. And we're kind of, in this here scenario, it actually has 4 people where there was once 5. And then it's opened up a spot to be a true front-level staff of a custodian, although I don't think you've actually filled that spot yet at this time, have you?
That's correct.
Yeah, but from that sense, to looking at where we were just at the time, a year or 2 ago, you have less than you did at that point in time. And maybe part of it is that they've seen some, well, I don't know. I mean, I think once you've eliminated one of those and you don't have the purchasing agent, then you have some needs. And it just seems like Lee's trying to find the best way to address those needs here.
oh, no, I don't dispute, it,
But we still lose,
Lee credit for trying, but
we lose kind of a middle, I think we actually go down a middle level management. Again, if you go back a couple of years and look at it from that component as opposed to just the most recently.
so are we approving like recommendations for this today or just the minutes?
Yeah, and I do have one more minute that one more component of the minutes that I kind of, because it was on the back of, or the next sheet, I kind of got lost on it and didn't finish that up, so maybe I should finish the minutes here. But item 5 was the request for classification resulting in new salary range. Hess had received many requests for reclassification from departments. 3 resulted in a change in pay grade. She distributed a 2-page spreadsheet entitled Reclassification on New Positions. Reclasses include network analyst to senior systems engineer, which is a change in grade from 15 to 17, survey tech, which is a change in grade from 8 to 11, and park administrator to director of Parks and Rec, which is a pay grade change of 20 to 21. Please note that the title changes aren't what changed the grade, it's the work that falls within the title changes. Let's see here. She also received ratings on 2 new positions that weren't in the organization before. They were records management analyst and assistant finance director, and based upon their points, they fall in at a 14 and 17. As I mentioned in the meeting, it used to be we'd kind of have to figure out where to put these things when they came in, but now we have a system that's more black and white, and they go where they go, and it's, before we kind of had some stuff that was all over the board, and we had to decide where to put it in, but there really doesn't need to be discussion because grade 14 and 17 is where they belong, so that completes the minutes.
Any further questions? So you're gonna move the minutes and the recommendations?
If you're prepared for that?
Well, I mean, you can do that, and then I can discuss more. But the other thing that I think should be on this chart is, we have department heads that report to the county board, but they also need to be tied in. So this chart should say, have every other department head kind of somehow,
Well, then it would be an organizational chart for the whole county and not just
Yeah,
the
that's
admin
admin.
department.
it's just admin for
This
now.
is just
Okay, I
admin.
got it. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. You beat me down.
Well, Charlie, we talked about it a lot in the committee, and I said,
I don't have-
Charlie's gonna have some questions on this stuff, and,
I don't have Delight here to back me up, so.
I even warned Lee that you don't, this could end up going to a committee of the whole, I don't know, but, if we got 3 up here that are okay with it, I think we'll
This
finish it
isn't,
off right now.
it isn't the most egregious thing, but it's a trend that we just see, that I see all the time, where we have to put more management, and I don't know, I see it in, like I said, it's the corporate world too, but it's like, if this was a small company, we would have, Tim Dahl would be helping out with purchasing when he didn't have time for this, or this person would be doing something else. We would be having more collateral duties, and it might be kind of a thing where, I don't know, it's just, when we get to this big deal, it's just, I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
I guess
and-
to Commissioner Burrell's point, I guess that's one thing I would like to commend my staff on. Over the last 3 years, we've had a fair amount of turnover through retirements and other things, and, it's not in my job description, I won't do it, it's what can I do to help? And people have been really great about pitching in, so, right, I mean, for example, Sue's been doing a lot of the purchasing, been doing some of the building stuff right now in the interim, Tim's been trying to get quotes on stuff. We've all been kind of pitching in. And that's one thing I'd like to commend my staff on, that,
But we're gonna go away from that, though.
I don't know that we
I
will.
think you will.
We're gonna phase that out here.
I think we try and work in a team environment, and people certainly have their specialties, but there's projects where we need to pull in more hands on the deck for a certain project, and I think that we've done a good job of working within the parameters that the board has given us, so.
See,
And Charlie, relative to more management and that sort of thing, I wish you would have been at the meeting to hear me argue until we got the future PIO position removed from here, because that was on here a few days ago, and now that's gone, so.
that shouldn't have taken much, though, did it?
Well, I don't know.
2 pages worth of minutes. I'm sure there was a lot more discussion than meets the eye on that.
In the big scheme of things, this is not the biggest decision we're gonna make as a board, but I don't know,
Okay, I'd like to,
so.
that's a call the question of this.
Mr. Chair, I will move the minutes and the recommendations from the Personnel Committee.
Okay,
Second.
motion has been made by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Swatsky. Further discussion?
I just want to make sure Sawatsky's going to vote for this, so he doesn't.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Technology, Commissioner Burrell, please.
Mr. Chair, the Technology Committee met on December 16th. Members present were Burrell, Delyden, Hawkins, Hivala, Tagaro, and Lee Kelly. Others present, Nelson, Cooper, Odell, Straubel, and Schwartz. The first thing we talked about, just real briefly, was the reorganization kind of in the IT department. Tagaro felt that by doing some reorganization, we could improve efficiencies, and I believe they did get one quote, and the recommendation is going to be obtain an additional quote and then proceed with the lowest bidder. And then the other thing we talked about, another thing, the board live streaming, we talked about that here. We're kind of a transition over to YouTube. They've been doing some testing, and Tagaro said that he and his staff have encountered some audio issues where the sound is not matching up with the picture, and they're using a free version of, I think it's called XSplit, and there was a paid version. It's not a huge amount, it's $60 a year, and they're going to be testing that and hoping that takes care of the problem. So basically, it was an informational thing only. They're still doing the testing and trying to figure that out. And the other thing we talked about is the board video retention. Tagawa said there's been discussion lately regarding how long the county should store the board meetings. If it does go to YouTube, YouTube seems to be storing these things almost indefinitely. And then they said they could be removed by the poster, I guess, so we could have them removed after a certain period of time if that was so wished. I don't know, there was discussion about it, and I just didn't see the need for it. And then we actually talked a little bit about maybe even putting the video onto a CD or some other version like that, and then have it sent to the Historical Society. So anyway, we're going to lay that over for, the recommendation was to lay it over for a future technology committee. And apparently they're going to have a records management analyst hired by then, and we'll get some information from that. And another thing that was brought up, Cooper brought up this, it's actually, I don't know if you see this in that kind of a chart that she came up with. And as far as rating projects, so it has kind of 4 quadrants, and the one is let's do it right away if it's low effort and high impact. On the opposite side of that is low impact and high effort. You would look at that and say, is it really necessary? And then there's other ones that have a high impact with high effort, and then there's other ones with low effort and low impact. So it kind of helps. It was kind of a chart where you put a project in, and if you evaluate it on these basis, to see where it should go on the priority chart kind of thing. And it was, again, an informational thing only, so. Mr. Chair, with that, I'll move forth the minutes with the recommendation, and the only recommendation was basically get the other quote and proceed with the lowest bidder. So that is, I mean, if somebody were questioning the project itself, I guess now would be the time for that too, so.
Also, the recommendation is to obtain additional quote and then proceed.
And proceed, right.
So we do know there is another vendor out there in the St. Cloud area?
They actually mentioned it's Herman Miller. They felt they would to get an additional quote from them. So.
Because we're going to need at least a second one when we do out at the new facility too, because we like to use this certain product, but we don't want to be held hostage by one vendor, so.
Just a quick comment too, we did actually find a third vendor that deals in refurbished Herman Miller furniture that actually
out walking the ditches and dealing with people. He's got a good personality. He gets along. I mean, I've talked to, I was at a meeting yesterday and I've talked to some people and said, well, my first deal wasn't so good, well, they're upset, and Mike has worked things out real well with people as far as on the communication level, and then I am glad to see that his goal for 2016 is to begin that spraying program. When we clean one of these ditches and we clean the banks off, if we're not going to take care of them, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Throwing good money after bad.
Yeah, throwing good money after bad, or it's throwing nothing and going to cost you more in the future. So it's good to see that.
It's part of the wellness program, Charlie.
There you go.
Exercise and futility.
But I did have a question. What was the total amount that Mike had for billed hours? Not billed hours, but the dollar amount.
Is that here? We had it in the committee. Do we have it here too, Lee? Here it is.
Should be in your materials.
158 and a half
Hours.
through October.
But how many dollars? What's the total dollars?
Well, what is he getting? 40-something an hour? 45 an hour?
Sounds correct, but I can certainly verify here quickly.
Yeah.
It just
It
seems
seemed
like
it seemed like we,
he's not charging very many
42.
hours. I think he ends up, does a lot of stuff that he doesn't record his hours for, if you ask me.
and
because-
that came up in
Because he is
discussion.
always busy, and I'm like, I talked to him about that. I said, Mike, when you take a call from somebody and you're on the phone for a half an hour, you should be compensated for
And
that.
the
Because
challenge-
he's dealing with a real issue, at that.
Well, and we're not, yeah, I guess, Charlie, we got what he's submitted something to us, and
Yeah.
certainly, there's
I mean,
nothing here that would make anybody
I
think
guess my
that
comparison
it's-
though is, I don't think Mike has $12,000 worth of billed expenses, and I think he's worked darn hard, put a lot of hours in, and I don't know if Eric has done that much. I mean, if you're comparing these two positions, so. And nothing against Eric, I
right,
think he's.
and, part of the challenge that Mike faces is that people will contact him and they might have a 30 or 40-minute conversation. As it turns out, it doesn't even involve a county
It's
ditch.
not even a county ditch.
It's a private ditch, and so, but sometimes it takes
Yeah.
that long before
Right.
he finds that out, and so then he can't bill. So,
Yeah.
Right.
But that
he needs
will,
to kind of, those things
he'll learn much quicker that something's not a ditch. Now, once he gets more familiar with the ditches, he'll know right away it's not.
And-
The people.
And
You know,
maybe be able
so
to ask that
the
question
people.
earlier in the discussion about exactly where is this, but
But
you're
no,
right.
I just said
You're
I-
right, he does have many, many hours that he's not billing for.
Okay, and then the other thing is, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, just chit-chat kind of thing, but.
Back to that issue just briefly
go
though,
ahead.
Charlie, Chris and I did tell him, if somebody's calling you,
Yeah.
I mean,
Good deal.
you're an expert on drainage and whatnot. I mean, if you want to tell them, hey, you're not on the county ditch, but I can come out and look at you and tell you what you need and that sort of thing, I mean, then I guess you have a relationship with them privately.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
And-
no different than an engineer or an architect or an attorney would.
Right,
you know?
I can come out and provide these services, and this is my fee.
But it's not getting billed through the county ditch, it's getting.
Yeah, and then,
That would be a
there's no way
private-
we can bill that through the county, and that's not a county expense.
The other thing with Eric, and I said I think he is doing a much better job too, I agree with that, did you mention to him, like, because their old weed inspector made almost every township officer association meeting?
Yeah, he had only been
Is it something that, yeah, I mean, I
think
I know they like to see
Yeah.
them,
He didn't get notice apparently of the last
okay.
one, and,
so he is gonna try to make them.
right.
Okay.
I think he's understanding the value in that now, and he has no conflict in
It's a
time.
relationship thing that he
Right.
needs.
Yeah.
His job, his other job changed, so he's more free in the
Perfect.
evenings now.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad Commissioner Brown got his questions answered. It wasn't just trying to grow government.
And just, Charlie, one of the things, we talked more about Eric because because last year I think there was some things that we knew needed improvement, but, that's probably why we had more discussion there, is we were noting how a lot of those things we felt had gotten better, but clearly the committee is very happy with the work of the drainage inspector. But relative to Eric, I mean, he actually does stuff where he goes out and just literally drives and looks for issues from the roadways and that sort of stuff. I know that was in his report, that he goes about and does that, so. And then I think 43 specific properties that he had to send notices out to. So, you know what I mean? If you look at some of the stuff he's done a lot of work with soil and water. He goes in and he gets maps from them, and he has them, and then he'll actually send out to the property owners, look, these are the areas where these weeds are on your property. So, he's doing a lot, like I say, he's really stepped it up from the year before, and I don't know relative to how many hours he puts in compared to Mike, and I think we'd just be speculating to guess that, but if you look at what he did this year, there was definitely time involvement with that. I mean, those letters don't get out on their own. You don't go to Soil and Water and get
I'm
that
okay.
sort of information without taking time.
I'm okay with both of them. I think they're doing a good job, and it was good that Eric did pick it up a little bit.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Item B, Ag and Drainage Inspector Appointments. Resolution appointing Eric hiring as Ag Inspector and authorizing
moved.
execution.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Swatsky, second by Commissioner Burrell. It's a roll call vote. Commissioner Burrell?
I have a question first. Are we going to do these separate or?
Yes.
Separate, okay. I vote aye.
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 Resolution carries. Next resolution, appointment of Michael Young to Drainage
Oh.
Inspector.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Burrell, motion, second by Commissioner Swatsky. Roll call vote. Commissioner Husum.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Next item, Advisory Committee, Board updates. Commissioner Burrell, have anything?
Yes, I was at a meeting yesterday sponsored by the Farm Bureau up at Silver Creek Township regarding the buffer law. They had people from, and I'll butcher this, but it was something like Minnesota Ag Water Resources was also there and did a presentation, and then Dan and a new person, Eric from Soil Water, that's going to be doing a lot of the buffer things, Eric Mattson, I think of his last name. But anyways, a really good presentation. It was well attended. I mean, it was like standing room only at Silver Creek, and Silver Creek is pretty big already, so I mean, it was a good crowd.
Did you say a new employee at Soil and Water? His name is Eric Mattson?
Eric Mattson, yeah.
Is it Dick's grandson?
No, I don't know. He's not a relation as far as I know there, but he is from Buffalo. So
Mattson?
M-A-T-T-S.
Did you ask if he was, or are you just assuming, no?
He's got reddish hair. I didn't think.
Well, so now I wonder if for some reason
Was he
I...
Irish?
But I don't think he, I'll find
You know where he
that out.
graduated from?
No, but I'll find that
Okay,
stuff
because I know where a
out
couple of
when we
kids,
go back to the
Dick's
boards.
kids were going to college recently.
Okay.
Because they had a
Anyway,
couple that were
he's-
just in
okay,
college that would have probably just graduated recently.
It was, like I said, really well attended. I made the comment that I thought they should have had it down in my district, because I think 75% of the people there were from my district, so it was good. And there was actually a guy from Pheasants Forever there too, and I've been coming down hard on them because I think it made it sound like they were pushing this. And he had told me, he said, they're always looking for expanding their pheasant habitat, but I think it got hijacked and got put on with this buffer thing, and I don't think they were totally happy with the way with the mandate kind of thing. They're kind of, whatever. And the Farm Bureau feels that they got hornswoggled a little bit or whatever, because it isn't really what they were told it was going to be either. So it got changed in the back rooms, kind of, so. But anyway, that was it.
Thank
Nothing
you.
else.
Last week, Friday, I attended a 55 Coalition meeting. We elected officers for the next year. Marvin Johnson was the chair again. We discussed some safety improvements on 55, mostly in the Hennepin County side. The Wright County side, County Road 3 was up, and that's going to be happening. Other things, we had discussions before about the 4 lanes coming from Arrowhead out to Loretto. And I got information from Met Council that they're okay with it, but John Griffith from Metro MnDOT has some reservations because he wants to fix other things first. In further talks with Jim Group from Hennepin County, and that those can be happening, and at the same time we're doing this. One of their solutions was try to just make the 2-lane outbound happen, but I don't think in the corridors of commerce, I don't think the legislature is going to like that. They're going to want the project going there. One thing I'm going to have conversations with John Griffith in the future to find out what their They had a 55 arterial study. And it seemed like it took the Wright County side by surprise that they actually had such a thing, because when I talked to Met Council and those people, they didn't inform me of such a thing. Even Senator Osment hadn't heard of it, and that's usually surprising because it's his district. You would think he'd know. Commissioner Johnson was also there briefly and commented 55 needs to get fixed, period. That's got to get going forward. So hopefully we can have some progress to, if they take some of that surplus money for Corridor Commerce project, that we can actually get this, because it is shovel ready. Environmentals, all those studies have been done. It's ready to go. Going from Arrowhead all the way to Rockford is problematic because of the size and scope of it, but getting to Loretto, at least get something construction moving, and that will help. It also ties in with Met Council's Bus Rapid Transit and Metro Link, a futuristic plan for 10 years out in Loretto, which will help our constituents that actually go to the Metro. They can stop at Loretto, take their bus in if that's what they want to do. Otherwise, further discussions with Metro MnDOT to make sure that we're getting all the information instead of just part of it. And that was it. Commissioner Swatsky?
You know, I got an idea, Mike, if you want to tie things in with the county and transit in the city, maybe rather than us having Trailblazer as a provider, maybe we should have someone like Maple Grove Transit provide services to us here. I wonder if the people from MnDOT would be receptive to that.
We did try that once.
I thought it went well.
So what you're saying is it would be too efficient relative to Trailblazer, and it makes too much sense.
One could view it that way.
Okay. My apologies for bringing that up, but when you brought about tying things in, we had the perfect opportunity
Yes,
here
well,
about a year
yeah,
or so
can't
ago.
blame you for that. Take
All on
advantage.
deaf ears, but, Mike and I attended the mayor's meeting. Not the large turnout from the cities. I'd say about half of the mayors were there probably, although all three from my district were there, but, nothing groundbreaking. There was some updates from cities, and we gave an update, but really nothing to add beyond that. And other than that, I just had committee meetings that were reported to the board, so.
All right. I attended the META meeting. It was a relatively short meeting. We approved a couple of grants, and that's a good reminder also that the schools have projects that are, they need some grant money for. We are approving grants up to $500 for anti-drug alcohol programs. And just a little plug for the Heritage Center and their Festival of Trees. They got a little competition going out there with the State Patrol and Wright County Sheriff's Department and the Buffalo Police Department. They all have pretty cool trees out there that they've decorated, and they're having votes. So I don't know how long you have to vote on that, but if you want to put your vote in to see who's going to be the big winner, but they've got, I don't know, I think dozens of different decorated trees out there. I'm going out there tonight with my grandchildren for their little program, so, yeah. That's a little,
If you like looking at nicely decorated Christmas trees and you've never been to the museum, there's two good reasons to go, and you
Yeah.
can see both at one stop.
that's true, yep,
They do a nice job with their Festival of Trees, I think they call
they
it.
do,
but-
and so, yeah. That's little trees tonight. Through January 9th or something, or 8th or 9th. So you got a little time. That's it.
Okay, and one other note of interest is Commissioner Hewsom is on the front page of the drummer this week with her writings and her 8 books and everything else. It's interesting reading, so I suggest anybody who has a chance, read it and find out
Thanks,
what our
Ed.
fine commissioner from Buffalo has been up to. And with that, being that there's no further business, we are adjourned at 9:58.
Christmas.